Of course it doesn't fit. So, after countless delays and lame excuses, the time has finally come. But first, indulge me for a moment while I go on one of my characteristic rambles that I promise I'll make relevant later. Whoop-ah! Here lately, and by lately I mean like for the past year or more, it seems like all anyone can talk about is the recession we're in. Oh, the recession is so terrible. I don't deny that we're in one, but it just really isn't that impressive to me for 3 reasons. Number one, we had just gotten done being in a recession of similar breadth and intensity to this one like a week before this one started. And if you study economics like I don't, you know that that's how it works. You get to have a week of marginal prosperity, and then another year and a half huddled around the fire barrel. Secondly, I live in Middle America, which is naturally less affected by this kind of thing, because here everyone's poor and the job market always sucks. Thirdly, and most importantly, because this is where I force a segue, to my recollection, America and or the world at large has been in some sort of economic peril pretty much my entire life. However, we must have been feeling pretty flush at some point, and I'm thinking that that some point was the late 80s. Otherwise, how do you explain this being classified as an intermediate-sized vehicle? Or this even existing? Or that a tasty brick like the Hurricane would be thought of as merely average in size? I believe the Firefly was in the smallest tier of M.A.S.K vehicles, so in Transformers terms, if we think of this as a Scout, then that would make this a Deluxe. Oh my! So that's the first thing that strikes me about the Hurricane, its lovable heftiness. The second thing is how it's kind of weird for me to even be doing this review. I was never really big into M.A.S.K. In fact, my first memory of M.A.S.K is not a good one. For those unfamiliar, the head dude of M.A.S.K was a fella named Matt Tracker, who I think drove several vehicles over the course of the series, but is probably best known for driving the Thunderhawk, which was a Gullwing Camaro, and its gimmick was that its doors would flap open and extend a bit, and jet turbines would pop out of the back of the car, and it would fly. My honest reaction to this, as a 4-year-old. Gay! Granted, it would never work in real life, but at least it looks terrible. I was apparently very bitter and sarcastic even as a wee lad. Fortunately, awesomeness of this magnitude transcends franchise apathy. Plus, I think I may have actually owned this when I was a kid, so bonus points for that. So check this beast out, if you please. It is a style cream sundae, drenched in hot style and covered in style sprinkles. Just for the record, flames never became passé. It's just that shortly after the 57 Bel Air, cars stopped being worthy of them. This shade of aquamarine, most of the reason why Kaname Chidori is popular. Ooh, anime references to confuse and alienate. What are you going to do? Why did we ever stop manufacturing cars to look like monsters from the front? And check these tires. They're massive, and they're real rubber. I want to gnaw on them, but I don't know where they've been. I could go further into exhaustive, slobbering detail in regards to what makes the Hurricane so great, but that would take a while. If only I could think of a single word that could succinctly encapsulate its glory. Thanks, Konata. Now for the main attraction. Here's the part where nostalgia whacks objectivity with a shovel. This is, in essence, just an exceptionally complex Cybertron gimmick. If I were being perfectly fair and dishonest, I might say, Dirt Boss does this and turns into a robot. 2 problems. For one thing, I was never really that impressed with Dirt Boss. For another, every time this happens, a crack fox giggle threatens to emerge. It's so very wonderful. But before we look at the battle mode of the car in depth, let's take a gander at old Hondo. He is a black man with no eyes, symbolic of the persisting racial tension of the era, or shoddy workmanship, and his mask is gargantuan and hideous. Seems to have kind of an aquatic thing going on, which could be cool if he had anything to do with water. Although I might not like the way the mask looks, I definitely like its function. It's known as the Blaster 2, and it shoots things. That's just so refreshingly unpretentious. Most of the other masks have powers that are all strange and esoteric, like on-demand sex change and the ability to smell thoughts. Anyway, it's Hondo's job to man this gun turret, and do so in a posture that makes it look like he should be bouncing gleefully. Yay, go faster! Hopefully this will come through. If you take a peek inside the Hurricane, you'll notice it fulfills one of the requirements of retro-futuristic technology circa 1986. Oh yeah, there's a sine wave. I wasn't quite sure what this was when it popped out. At first I thought night vision scanner, because I vaguely recall reading something about that somewhere. And then I thought maybe it's supposed to be the world's least effective battering ram. But I found a web page devoted to this very toy, and it turns out it's a gun. Duh! What could I have been thinking? Gale Force Wind Howitzer. I'm fine with just Howitzer, actually. I don't need a weather report, too. Locally heavy rainfall possible cluster bomb. Mostly cloudy with isolated flurries missile laser. I'm not too sure about these things. They're supposed to be yet more guns, but to me it just looks like the Hurricane is experiencing cartoon surprise. Up front we have the monitor for a targeting array mounted on the outside so that the people the Hurricane is shooting at can watch their own deaths. The spare tire is supposed to launch off when the car elevates, or so I thought. It turns out it's a little bit more involved than that. What you do is twist the cabin to elevate the suspension, unscrew this housing and take it completely off, tap the launcher until the thing launches, and by launches I mean sort of forlornly coughs out. It has a 20-plus-year-old spring, you know. Put the housing back on, put the screws back in, fumble one of the screws and accidentally drop it inside the body of the car, swear, finally shake the screw back out, put it back where it goes, and you're done. Possibly my favorite weapon on the whole thing, a buzzsaw that will not work on anyone who isn't 6 inches behind the Hurricane. It's kind of sinister, really, because the only possible use I can think of for it is to de-leg curious civilians. It should be fairly obvious at this point how I feel about this vehicle. However, as for the question, would I recommend that you, the viewer, go and start collecting M.A.S.K vehicles? Not exactly. This Hurricane is complete and in pretty good condition. I know some of the spring-loaded elements are kind of finicky, but you have to keep in mind it's 2 years away from literally being an antique. I snagged it off of eBay for probably a little too much. It wasn't one of those instances where I went, "What have I done?" Well, that has happened before, though. But still, it was a little pricey. And that seems to be the trend with most M.A.S.K merchandise in any sort of decent condition. Combine that with my previously stated lack of enthusiasm regarding the M.A.S.K franchise, and the chance of a recommendation becomes even more remote. Most summations of M.A.S.K that I've read go a little something like this. Elements of G.I. Joe and Transformers combining to make something not quite as good as either. And that's pretty spot on as far as I'm concerned. On the other hand, it's possible to not be as good as G.I. Joe or Transformers and still be pretty cool. And there's also the obvious fact that I also have a Firefly, and a Stinger is on the way. So do whatever you want, I guess. My advice is obviously disingenuous and hypocritical. So anyway, until next time, I've been Caleb, this has been awesome, and I'm not good at ending videos.